The blade stopped inches from his throat. Captain General Valoris didn't flinch. The assassin's hand trembled against the auramite edge, muscles straining against an impossible force. "You cannot kill what is already dead." Valoris whispered. The throne room reeked of ozone and burning flesh. 10,000 years of standing guard had carved hollow spaces where a man's soul should be. The assassin's eyes widened as he realized the truth. This golden giant wasn't human anymore. He was something far worse. In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there exists no greater hell than perfection. The Adeptus Custodes know this truth better than any living being. They are the Emperor's chosen guardians, his golden angels, his perfect killing machines. They are also the loneliest creatures in the galaxy. Every custodian begins as a child, not chosen for nobility or wealth, but for genetic compatibility with technologies that would kill lesser mortals. At age 4, they disappear into the vaults beneath Terra. They never emerge as children again. The transformation process takes decades. Bone marrow is replaced with synthetic compounds. Organs are rebuilt from scratch. Neural pathways are rewired for superhuman reflexes. But the worst part isn't physical. It's watching their humanity drain away, drop by precious drop. Custodian Aquilon remembers his first name. Sometimes. It surfaces during the long watches, when the silence grows so thick it threatens to suffocate even his enhanced lungs, Marcus. Or was it Matthias? The memory slips away like smoke. He stands motionless for 18 hours at a time. His golden armor weighs 600 pounds, but he feels nothing. His guardian spear could cleave through tank armor, but he's used it to kill exactly 3 enemies in 2 centuries of service. 3 kills in 200 years. The mathematics of futility. Most Imperial soldiers dream of glorious death in battle. Custodians dream of feeling something, anything. The genetic modifications that grant them superhuman abilities also dampen their emotional responses. They can love, but only in whispers. They can rage, but only in shadows. They can grieve, but only in silence. The Emperor sits before them on the golden throne, a rotting corpse sustained by 10,000 psychers sacrificed daily. His psychic presence burns through their minds like acid. Every custodian feels his pain, his endless agony, his desperate need. They cannot help him. They can only watch. Custodian Commander Trajan Valoris has served for over a millennium. He remembers when the Emperor could still speak, when his voice could shake mountains and inspire billions. Now he screams in languages that predate human speech. Every night, Valoris dreams of mercy, of pulling the plug, of ending 10 millennia of suffering with a single, clean cut. Every morning, he takes his post and guards the monster his god has become. The other custodians don't speak of these thoughts. They don't need to. The weight of their shared burden presses down like a physical thing, crushing hope beneath layers of duty and honor. They are perfect soldiers in an imperfect war. They are living weapons in a dying galaxy. They are the Emperor's final gift to humanity. But what happens when the gift becomes a curse? In the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, there exists a brotherhood, forged not in love, but in agony, the Adeptus Custodes. 10,000 golden warriors who stand as humanity's final shield against the void. But their gleaming armor hides a truth darker than the galaxy itself. Every custodian begins as a child. Taken before their first breath becomes memory, stolen from mothers who will never know their names. What follows is not training. It is transformation through torment. For over 10,000 years, The Emperor's gene rights have perfected the art of breaking human souls and rebuilding them as living weapons. Each candidate endures procedures that would kill a space marine. Bones shattered and regrown stronger. Organs replaced with synthetic perfection. Minds scrubbed clean of weakness, of mercy, of doubt. 99% die screaming. The survivors emerge as something beyond human recognition. Faster than thought, stronger than steel, more loyal than death itself. But loyalty comes with a price that even gods demand payment for. These golden sentinels know no rest, no family, no love beyond their duty to a corpse emperor who hasn't spoken in millennia. They stand vigil in halls where silence weighs heavier than armor. They patrol corridors that stretch beyond sight, where shadows hold horrors that could unmake reality. Every breath they take is measured, every heartbeat counted. Every moment of their existence belongs to another. They watch their brothers fall to madness, to exhaustion, to enemies that wear the faces of friends. They see the Imperium they protect crumble piece by piece, while they remain frozen in perfect, golden stillness. This is not a story of heroes. This is the chronicle of the Emperor's most perfect prisoners. Warriors who traded their humanity for the privilege of eternal servitude. Guardians who protect a dream that died 10,000 years ago, yet refused to let it rest. In our world, we debate the cost of security versus freedom. We question how much of ourselves we're willing to sacrifice for protection. The Custodes have no such luxury. They are the answer to that question, written in blood and gold across the stars. They are what happens when duty becomes everything, when sacrifice becomes identity, when the line between protector and prisoner disappears entirely. Their story begins not with glory, but with a child's scream echoing through sterile chambers, with gene forges that burn hotter than suns, with the first moment a human soul realizes it will never be human again, and in the deepest vaults of Terra, where even light fears to tread, the machinery of their creation still turns, still hungry, still waiting for the next offering, because the Emperor's work is never finished, and neither is their suffering. But what they discovered in those first moments of transformation would haunt them for eternity. The screaming echoes through the marble halls of Terra's deepest vaults. It's been going on for 73 hours straight. Candidates who entered these trials as the finest warriors humanity could produce now writhe in agony that would shatter space marine minds. The Adeptus Custodes selection process doesn't just test physical limits. It rewrites the very essence of what it means to be human. Valerian remembers his own trials. The memory burns like acid in his enhanced mind. First came the crucible of pain. Naked candidates suspended over pits of molten adamantium, their flesh slowly cooking while they recited 10,000 years of imperial history. One mistake meant starting over. The heat blistered skin from bone, the smell of charred flesh mixed with incense and sacred oils. Those who survived faced the chamber of echoes. Here, psychic torturers peeled back layers of memory and identity. They forced candidates to relive their worst failures, their deepest shames, amplified 1,000-fold. Strong men wept blood. Heroes begged for death. The trial masters watched with cold eyes, taking notes. Break them completely, the ancient protocols demanded. Only then can they be rebuilt. Valerian had watched his closest friend Marcus crack during the third day. The man who'd saved his life in the Terran academies suddenly turned, clawing at his own eyes, screaming that the Emperor was a lie. The trial masters executed him instantly. No hesitation, no mercy. But the physical trials were nothing compared to what came next. The moral labyrinth forced candidates to make impossible choices. Save 1 million civilians, or protect a single imperial relic? Execute your own brother, or watch a planet burn? Each decision carved away pieces of their humanity, replacing compassion with cold calculation. The successful candidates emerged as something else entirely. No longer fully human, not yet Custodes. They called this stage the Hollow Men. For months, these broken warriors wandered Terra's halls like ghosts. Their enhanced bodies could crush tanks, but their minds remained shattered fragments. Some never recovered. They became the broken, failed Custodes, who served as living reminders of the price of inadequacy. Valerian touches the scar on his temple, where the neural implants were first inserted. The pain never truly fades. Even now, 10 millennia later, he can feel the cold metal threading through his brain tissue. The implants that allowed him to process information at superhuman speeds also carried something else. Something the trial masters never mentioned. Memories that weren't his own. Fragments of consciousness from previous custodes. Dead warriors whose experiences now lived inside his skull. Their pain, their failures, their final moments. He carries the death screams of 1,000 golden warriors. This is what they never tell the candidates. The trials don't just break you and rebuild you stronger. They fill the cracks with the ghosts of the fallen. Every Custodes is haunted. Valerian watches new candidates enter the trial chambers below. Young faces full of hope and determination. They have no idea what awaits them in the darkness. How many will emerge whole? How many will join the whispers in his head? But as he observes their confident strides, Valerian notices something that makes his enhanced blood run cold. One of the candidates bears a face he recognizes. The same face that screamed his name before the trial master's blades fell. Marcus had returned. The screaming had stopped 3 hours ago. Valerian hung suspended in the gene-forging chamber, his body a canvas of agony painted in chrome and gold. Steam rose from his flesh, where the Emperor's own genetic material fused with his DNA. The smell of burning bone filled the air. This was the 4th year of his transformation. 4 years of having his humanity stripped away, cell by cell. The custodian apothecaries watched through reinforced glass, their faces hidden behind golden masks. They showed no emotion as Valerian's spine extended, his bones thickening to superhuman density. The sound was like breaking timber, but slower, more deliberate. Subject shows acceptable adaptation rates. One muttered, making notes on a data slate. Proceed to neural enhancement phase. Valerian tried to speak. Only blood came out. The machine above him hummed to life, lowering a crown of needles toward his skull. Each needle was thinner than human hair, designed to pierce his brain in exactly 327 locations. They would rewrite his mind, burning away fear, doubt, mercy, everything that made him human. He remembered his mother's face from before the selection, the way she'd wept when the golden giants came to their hab block, how she'd whispered his real name one last time before they took him to the palace. That memory would be gone soon. They always were. The needles descended with mechanical precision. Valerian's enhanced nervous system registered each puncture with crystalline clarity. His brain tissue parted like water, accepting the Emperor's will into every synapse. Pain became purpose. Agony became devotion. Through the observation window, he glimpsed another chamber. Another candidate hung there, motionless. The boy couldn't have been more than 12. His chest no longer rose and fell. Failure rate, 99.7%. Valerian was among the lucky ones. The neural crown began its work, flooding his consciousness with tactical data, weapon specifications, and absolute loyalty to the master of mankind. His personality dissolved like salt in acid, replaced by something harder, colder, perfect. Hours passed, or perhaps days. Time meant nothing in the forging chambers. Only transformation mattered, only becoming worthy of standing guard over humanity's God. When the machines finally released him, Valerian dropped to the chamber floor. His legs, now thick as tree trunks, held his weight easily. His hands, enlarged and reinforced, could crush ceramite. He looked down at his reflection in the pooled blood. Golden eyes stared back. A stranger's face, beautiful and terrible. The apothecary approached, holding a mirror of polished gold. "Behold yourself, custodian. You are no longer mortal. You are the Emperor's will made flesh." Valerian stared at his reflection. Somewhere in the back of his mind, a small voice whispered a name. His mother's voice, calling to a boy who no longer existed. He crushed that voice without hesitation. "I am ready to serve," he said, his new voice deeper than thunder. The apothecary smiled behind his mask. "Good. Because your real training begins now." But what they did to him next would make the gene forging seem like mercy. The screaming echoed through the sterile halls of the Imperial Palace laboratories. Not the screams of pain. Those had stopped hours ago. These were the sounds of something being unmade and rebuilt at the cellular level. Alex had been 12 when they brought him to the gene-forging chambers. Now, suspended in biofluid that burned like liquid fire, he couldn't remember what 12 felt like. The alchemical cocktail flooding his veins rewrote his DNA strand by strand. The custodian apothecaries watched through reinforced glass, their golden armor reflecting the pulsing red lights of the monitoring equipment. To them, Alex wasn't a child anymore. He was raw material being shaped into something beyond human comprehension. The gene seed implantation began at dawn. 17 organs harvested from the Emperor's own genetic template, each one forced into Alex's expanding ribcage. His bones cracked and reformed to accommodate hearts that beat within human rhythm. The progenoid glands fused with his spine, sending tendrils of altered flesh through his nervous system. Alex's consciousness flickered between agony and transcendence, as his brain chemistry rewrote itself. Memories of his family dissolved like sugar in acid. The worst part wasn't the physical transformation. It was watching his reflection change in the polished metal of the surgical table. His eyes shifted from brown to the golden amber of the custodes. His face elongated, becoming something beautiful and terrible. Subject shows acceptable integration rates, the lead apothecary noted, his voice devoid of emotion. Proceeding to muscular enhancement phase. The muscle grafting process took 3 days. Alex's body swelled as synthetic fibers wove themselves between his natural tissue. His skeleton reinforced itself with ceramite compounds that made his bones harder than steel. The smell of burning flesh filled the chamber as his skin adapted to contain his expanding frame. By the 4th day, Alex stood 7 feet tall. His child's voice had deepened to a resonant bass that vibrated through the chamber walls. When he flexed his fingers, the metal, restraints groaned under pressure that could crush a man's skull. The psychological conditioning began immediately. Neural implants flooded his mind with tactical data, weapon specifications, and absolute loyalty protocols. The Emperor's will became his will. His individual desires withered and died, replaced by singular purpose. Other candidates didn't survive. Alex watched through the observation windows as bodies were wheeled out, covered in white sheets. The failure rate was 97%. For every 100 children who entered the gene-forging crucible, only 3 emerged as custodians. The survivors weren't human anymore. They were living weapons, crafted with the precision of master artisans and the brutality of industrial machinery. Their childhood memories had been burned away, replaced with combat doctrines and strategic imperatives. Alex's transformation neared completion as the final neural pathways solidified. The pain had become background noise, as constant and ignored as breathing. He felt his old self dying, cell by cell, thought by thought. The apothecary approached with the final injection, the one that would complete his metamorphosis into an Adeptus Custodes. As the needle pierced his neck, Alex felt the last traces of his humanity slip away. But in the depths of his altered mind, something unexpected stirred. A fragment of memory, somehow missed by the conditioning process. Then the chamber doors burst open, and everything changed. The screaming never stops in the laboratories beneath the Imperial Palace. Kalen had thought he understood pain. 3 decades of training. Bones shattered and rebuilt, muscles torn and regrown. But this was something else entirely. The gene rights worked with surgical precision. Their augmetic limbs moved like spiders across his exposed flesh. Each injection burned like molten metal coursing through his veins. Subject shows 97% compatibility, one muttered through his Vox grill. Proceeding with Phase 7 enhancement. Kalen's vision blurred as another syringe pierced his spine. The Emperor's own genetic material. Sacred, irreplaceable, and absolutely agonizing as it rewrote every cell in his body. Around him, other aspirants hung suspended in crystalline pods. Some floated peacefully in biofluid. Others convulsed as their bodies rejected the modifications. The lucky ones died quickly. Marcus had been in the pod beside him yesterday. Now only empty glass remained. The mortality rate for this batch is acceptable. The gene write continued, making notes on his data slate. 63% survival. Well within parameters. 63%. Of the 1,000 aspirants who'd begun the trials, only 600 would emerge. The rest would become nothing more than biological waste, incinerated in the palace's fusion reactors. Kalen tried to speak, but his throat had been restructured. New vocal cords, denser bone structure. His jaw could now crush ceramite. If he survived the next 12 hours. The gene write leaned closer, studying Kalen's vitals on the monitoring equipment. Fascinating. His pain receptors are adapting faster than predicted. Usually takes weeks to develop that level of tolerance. Pain tolerance. As if this was merely discomfort. Every nerve ending felt like it was being flayed with molecular wire. His bones stretched and thickened, cracking audibly as they grew. New organs sprouted in his chest cavity, pushing aside his original anatomy. Through the observation window, he glimpsed other chambers, hundreds of them, stretching into the darkness, each one containing an aspirant undergoing their own transformation or death. The irony wasn't lost on him. They called themselves the 10,000, but the number was constantly fluctuating. Death in service, new recruits, the endless cycle of selection and enhancement. How many had died just today? How many more would die tomorrow? Neural integration at 85%, the gene write announced. Beginning cranial modifications. Kalen felt the drill pierce his skull, no anesthetic. Pain was part of the process. It taught them to endure, to push beyond mortal limitations. But as the drill bit deeper, he began to understand the true horror of his situation. This wasn't just physical transformation. They were rewriting his mind, his memories. His very identity was being stripped away and rebuilt according to the Emperor's design. The person he had been, the boy from the hive cities who dreamed of glory, was dying on this table. What would emerge wouldn't be human anymore. The Gene Wright paused, studying a readout with sudden interest. Curious, his psychological resistance patterns are unusual. He turned to his assistant, lowering his voice to a whisper, but Kalen's enhanced hearing caught every word. This one remembers something he shouldn't. Something about the Emperor that was supposed to be erased. The drill stopped spinning, but the real horror hadn't even begun. The Golden Warrior stood motionless in the Emperor's throne room for 372 hours. No food, no water, no sleep. His name was Valoris, and he was beginning to understand the true cost of perfection. The stench of decay drifted from the golden throne itself. The Emperor's body, more corpse than god, leaked fluids that stained the ancient machinery. Valoris had watched lesser men vomit at the smell. He felt nothing. That was the problem. Centuries of genetic manipulation had stripped away his humanity piece by piece. Fear, gone. Doubt, erased. Love, a distant memory from his childhood before the surgeries began. The irony burned like acid in his enhanced mind. They had made him perfect to serve humanity. But in doing so, they had made him something that was no longer human. "Do you ever wonder what we've become?" whispered Custodian Aquilon, breaking protocol for the first time in decades. Valoris turned his head. The movement felt mechanical, calculated. Even this simple gesture had been optimized for maximum efficiency. "We are what we were made to be," Valoris replied. But the words tasted like ash. Aquilon's golden armor caught the throne room's sickly light. "I found records today. From before our transformation, a boy named Marcus used to laugh at jokes. He cried when his pet died. The confession hung in the recycled air like a toxin. That boy is dead," Valoris said. "We killed him to become this. But what if that boy was the best part of us?" The question struck deeper than any blade. Valoris felt something crack inside his perfect mind. A hairline fracture and 10,000 years of conditioning. He remembered fragments now. A mother's touch. The warmth of sunlight on skin that could still feel. The simple joy of running without purpose or mission, all sacrificed on the altar of duty. The Emperor's corpse wheezed on its throne. Life support machines hummed their eternal dirge. And Valoris realized the horrible truth that had been staring at them for millennia. They weren't protecting humanity. They were protecting the thing that had consumed it. The Emperor had demanded perfection, and in achieving it, they had become the very opposite of everything human. Cold, calculating, empty. "We are the greatest tragedy in human history," Valoris whispered. "We became gods to serve a corpse." Aquilon's breathing grew ragged. "Then what does that make us?" Valoris looked at his golden hands. Hands that could crush a space marine's skull. Hands that had once belonged to a child who dreamed of simple things. "Monsters," he said. "Beautiful, perfect monsters." The throne room's temperature dropped 2 degrees. Security sensors detected elevated stress markers in both custodians. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Emperor's perfect guardians felt the weight of what they had lost. But the real question wasn't what they had become. The question was, what would they do about it? Captain General Trajan Valoris stands before the Eternity Gate, his auramite armor reflecting the dying light of 10,000 years of war. The webway tunnels stretch behind him like arteries of a dying god, each passage carved with the blood of his brothers. He remembers when there were 10,000 of them. Now, 300 custodians guard the throne. The rest lie buried in alien dimensions, their golden forms twisted by horrors that have no names. The irony tastes like copper in his mouth. They were created to be immortal, perfect, unbreaking. Yet here they stand, the last guardians of a corpse emperor, fighting an endless war that began before most civilizations learned to make fire. Trajan's gauntlet tightens around his guardian spear. The weapon hums with power, older than Terra's continents. Behind him, the golden throne wheezes. Each mechanical breath costs 1,000 psychers their lives. The webway war never ended. It just moved deeper. Every day, demons press against the barriers his brothers died to maintain. Every hour, another section of the Emperor's great work crumbles into the warp. And they hold the line. Not because they believe in victory anymore. Victory died with Horus 10 millennia ago. They hold because that's what they were made to do. Trajan remembers his first kill in the webway tunnels. A demon of Slanesh, beautiful and terrible, wearing the face of a child. He cut it down without hesitation. That was 9,000 years ago. Since then, he's killed things that would drive mortals insane just to perceive. Horrors that feast on hope itself. Each kill carved another piece from his soul. The golden armor doesn't just protect his body. It holds together what's left of his humanity. Without it, he knows he'd be just another monster in the dark. The Vox crackles. Shield Captain Valerian's voice cuts through static laced with screams. Sir, breach in Sector Gamma 7. Keeper of secrets leading a warband through the tertiary passages. Trajan doesn't sigh. Custodians don't show weakness, but inside something that might once have been hope dies a little more. How many? 12 demons confirmed. Maybe more in the shadows. 12 demons. In the old days, that would have been a minor skirmish. Now it's a crisis that could cost them 3 more brothers. 3 more golden warriors who will never see Terra's sun again. Trajan activates his teleportarium beacon. The familiar sensation of reality tearing apart washes over him. For a moment, he exists nowhere. In that space between spaces, he wonders if this is what death feels like. Then he materializes in Sector Gamma 7, where the air tastes of brass and broken promises. The Keeper of Secrets turns toward him, 6 arms spread wide in mockery of benediction. Its voice is silk wrapped around razors. Ah, the Golden Fool arrives. Tell me, little guardian, how does it feel to serve a rotting corpse? Trajan raises his spear. The demon laughs, a sound like crystal breaking in reverse. You know the truth, don't you? Your emperor is already dead. Has been for 10,000 years. You're just too proud to admit it. The words hit harder than any blade. Because somewhere, in the deepest part of his mind, Trajan wonders if the demon might be right. But then he remembers his oath and charges. The real horror hadn't even begun. Captain General Valoris stands motionless in the throne room. 10,000 years of silence. The Golden Warrior has not moved for 3 centuries. His breathing has slowed to 1 breath per hour. His heart's beat once every 10 minutes. This is the price of perfection. The Emperor's psychic screams echo through his mind constantly. Every second brings visions of demons clawing at reality's edge. Every moment shows him 1,000 ways humanity could die. Valoris feels each death across the galaxy. A child on Cadia, a mother on Armageddon, a soldier bleeding out in the void. Their pain becomes his pain. Their terror becomes his burden, but he cannot move, cannot speak, cannot even blink. The vigil demands absolute stillness. Around him, 300 other custodians maintain their own silent watch. Some have stood for millennia. Others collapsed decades ago, their minds finally breaking under the psychic weight. Their bodies remain upright. Their armor locks in place. But inside those golden shells, nothing remains but screaming madness. Valoris knows he will join them eventually. Every custodian does. The smell of incense cannot mask the stench of decay. Beneath their armor, some guardians have been dead for centuries. Their enhanced biology keeps them standing. Their neural implants maintain basic functions. But their souls fled long ago. This is what the Emperor demands. Not just their lives, but their sanity, their humanity, their very existence reduced to a single purpose. Protect the throne. Valoris remembers his first day here, the pride in his golden armor, the honor of standing before the master of mankind. That was 8,000 years ago. Now he understands the truth. They are not guardians. They are prisoners, locked in a golden cage of duty and devotion. The Emperor's psychic presence presses against his mind like molten lead. Every thought is monitored. Every doubt is punished. Every moment of weakness brings agony beyond description. Some nights, Valoris dreams of walking away, of feeling sunlight on his face, of hearing laughter instead of screams, of remembering what it felt like to be human. But those dreams are heresy, and heresy means death. The throne room temperature never changes. Exactly 18.7 degrees Celsius. The humidity remains constant at 34%. Even the air tastes the same, copper and ozone and the bitter tang of psychic energy. Time becomes meaningless. Valoris has watched empires rise and fall through the throne room's viewing portals. He has seen stars die and new ones born. He has witnessed the slow decay of everything the Emperor built. And still, he stands. Because that is what custodians do. They endure, they suffer, they sacrifice everything for a corpse on a golden throne. But tonight, something changes. A tremor runs through the palace, subtle, almost imperceptible. Valoris feels it in his bones. The other custodians sense it too. For the first time in centuries, their eyes move, just slightly, just enough to show they still live. The Emperor's psychic screams grow louder. Something is coming, something that will test even the endless vigil of the Adeptus Custodes. But what approached the throne room that night would shatter everything they believed about duty, honor, and the price of perfection. The Shadowkeeper's blade trembled against Valoris's throat. For 10,000 years, they had stood together, shoulder to shoulder in the throne room, brothers forged in the same crucible of pain and perfection. Now the golden giant pressed cold ceramite against his captain general's neck. "You know what you've done," Asterion whispered. His voice cracked like breaking glass. Valoris felt the blade's edge draw a thin line of blood. The crimson droplet traced down his gorget, staining the aquila etched there. The smell of ozone filled the air. Warning klaxons screamed through the palace corridors. "The Emperor's will is absolute," Valoris said quietly. Asterion's grip tightened. "The Emperor's will, or your interpretation of it?" The truth hung between them like a blade. 3 days ago, Valoris had received the vision, the Emperor's psychic whisper, burning through his mind like molten gold. The Primarch must die. Reboot Guilliman, the avenging son, the Emperor's own blood. But the vision had been clear. Guilliman's resurrection was a mistake. His presence in the 42nd millennium would doom humanity to eternal stagnation. Valoris had acted without question, without hesitation. The poison had been tasteless, odorless, a masterwork of the custodian chemists. Guilliman had died screaming. "You murdered a Primarch," Asterion breathed. "You killed the Emperor's son. I saved the Imperium. You destroyed it." The blade pressed deeper. Valoris felt his pulse against the metal. Around them, the throne room stretched in golden silence. The Emperor sat motionless on his throne, skeletal fingers gripping the armrests. His eye sockets stared into eternity. Did he approve? Did he condemn? The psychic whisper had felt so real, so certain. But now, with Asterion's blade at his throat, Valoris wondered, had it been the Emperor's voice or something else entirely? "The other custodians are coming," Asterion said. "They'll be here in minutes." Valoris could hear them now, the thunder of golden boots on marble, the hum of guardian spears powering up, his brothers, his sons, coming to judge him. "What will you tell them?" Valoris asked. Asterion's hand shook. The blade wavered. "That you were deceived? That something in the warp wore the Emperor's voice like a mask?" The possibility hit Valoris like a physical blow, a demon, a chaos god, something that had learned to mimic the Emperor's psychic signature, something that wanted Guilliman dead. "But I heard him," Valoris whispered. "I felt his will." "You felt what it wanted you to feel." The footsteps grew closer. Dozens of custodians converging on the throne room. Asterion leaned close. His breath was hot against Valoris's ear. "There's still time to make this right. To confess. To beg the Emperor's forgiveness." Valoris closed his eyes. The weight of 10 millennia pressed down on him. He had served without question, without doubt. Now doubt consumed him like acid. "Choose," Asterion said. "Die as a traitor, or live as a penitent." The throne room doors burst open, but the custodians who entered weren't wearing gold. The throne room stretches before Valdor like a cathedral of dying light. 10,000 years of vigil. 10,000 years of watching the master of mankind waste away in golden agony. The smell hits him first. Ozone and burning flesh. The metallic tang of blood that never quite dries. The Astronomican's psychic light bathes everything in sickly yellow, casting shadows that seem to writhe with their own malevolent life. Valdor's enhanced hearing picks up the whisper-thin rasp of the Emperor's breathing. Each breath a universe of pain compressed into sound, my lord. Valdor speaks into the silence. No response. There never is any more. The Captain General remembers when the Emperor's voice could shake mountains, when his presence could bring entire star systems to their knees in worship. Now there is only the endless hum of machinery keeping a corpse god alive. Valdor's ceramite boots echo against marble floors stained with the psychic residue of 1,000,000 screaming souls. Each step brings him closer to the golden throne, that magnificent torture device that has become both salvation and damnation for humanity. The tech priests scurry around the base of the throne like insects, their mechadendrites weaving between cables thick as a man's torso. They whisper in binary cant, their voices a mechanical prayer to the Omnissiah. But Valdor sees what they refuse to acknowledge. The Emperor is dying, has been dying for 10 millennia. The realization burns through Valdor's enhanced mind like acid. Every gene-crafted instinct screams at him to protect, to serve, to preserve. But how do you protect someone from their own sacrifice? He approaches the throne's base, feeling the psychic pressure build like a vice around his skull. Lesser men would be driven mad by proximity to such raw power. Custodians are built to endure, but endurance has its own brutality. The Imperium burns, my lord. Valdor reports to the silent figure. Chaos spreads like a cancer. Your sons war against each other while Xenos feast on human worlds. Still nothing. Valdor's fists clench. For the first time in his existence, doubt creeps into his perfect mind. What if their vigil is meaningless? What if the Emperor's dream died with him on Horus's flagship? The golden light flickers. For one impossible moment, Valdor feels something brush against his consciousness. Not words, but pure emotion. Sorrow deeper than oceans. Regret that could drown worlds, and something else. A presence, ancient, vast, watching. Valdor's blood turns to ice in his veins. The Emperor's psychic emanations have always been overwhelming, but this feels different. Alien, the tech priests suddenly stop their ministrations. Their augmetic eyes turn toward Valdor in perfect unison, glowing red in the throne room's eternal twilight. Captain General. They speak as one, their voices layered with harmonics that shouldn't exist. The Emperor stirs. Valdor draws his guardian spear, its power field crackling to life. The familiar weight brings no comfort, because something is moving in the shadows behind the golden throne. Something that shouldn't be there. The golden warrior knelt in the throne room's perpetual twilight. His name had been carved from his mind 10,000 years ago. His face hidden beneath a helm that had never known removal since his ascension. But the memory remained. The memory of what he had been before the Emperor's gene rights tore him apart and rebuilt him as something more and infinitely less than human. The psychic screams from the golden throne pierced his enhanced consciousness like molten needles. Each day, the Emperor's agony grew more acute. Each day, the custodian felt it echo through his modified neural pathways. He had stood this vigil for 7 millennia without rest. The irony cut deeper than any blade. Created to be the perfect guardian, he was helpless to ease his master's suffering. The very loyalty gene-coded into his DNA prevented him from granting the mercy his Emperor desperately needed. A servo skull drifted past, its red optics scanning for threats that would never come. Not here. Not to the throne room. The real threats came from within, from the slow erosion of purpose, from watching the Imperium rot while standing motionless as a statue. His enhanced hearing caught the whispered prayers of pilgrims in the outer chambers. They prayed to a god who screamed in eternal torment mere meters away. They prayed to a corpse that refused to die. The custodian's grip tightened on his guardian's spear. The weapon's power field hummed softly, a sound that had become his only companion across the centuries. He remembered the first time he had killed for the Emperor. A child, barely old enough to walk, whose psychic potential threatened to tear reality apart. The custodian had snapped the infant's neck with surgical precision. He had felt nothing. That was the true horror. Not the killing, the absence of remorse. The gene rights had carved away his capacity for doubt along with his humanity. A new scream echoed from the throne, louder this time, desperate. The custodian's enhanced physiology registered the psychic pressure like a physical weight. His ceramite armor groaned under forces that existed beyond the material realm. Still, he did not move. Could not move. The loyalty protocols burned through his nervous system like acid whenever he considered abandoning his post. Even for a moment, Even to grant his master the peace of oblivion, he was the perfect slave, crafted by the perfect tyrant. In the distance, he heard the mechanical wheeze of life support systems, the wet sound of nutrient tubes feeding a body that should have died millennia ago. The Emperor had created the Custodians to be incorruptible. He had succeeded too well. They could not be corrupted by chaos, by doubt, by mercy, or by the simple human recognition that some fates were worse than death. The Golden Warrior remained motionless as the screaming continued. His duty was eternal, his suffering infinite. And in the depths of his modified mind, a terrible question echoed. What difference existed between the guardian and the prisoner when both were chained by loyalty to a throne built on bones? In our modern world, we speak of toxic loyalty, of blind obedience to systems that destroy us. We click like on posts that celebrate sacrifice without questioning what or who we're sacrificing for. Every subscription is an oath of fealty. Every notification, a chain we forge ourselves. The Golden Warrior stands motionless in the throne room's perpetual twilight. 10,000 years have passed since his last conversation. 10,000 years since he spoke a word that wasn't a battle cry or death oath. The silence has weight now. It presses against his enhanced eardrums like deep ocean water. His brothers stand beside him, equally still, equally broken, equally perfect. They are living statues in a mausoleum of their own making. The Emperor's corpse light flickers across their auramite armor. Each pulse reminds them of their greatest failure. Each breath they take is borrowed time from a debt they can never repay. A new threat approaches Terra's outer defenses. The Vox channels crackle with desperate reports from the Imperial Navy. The Custodian's hand moves to his guardian's spear. The motion is automatic, programmed, holy. He has made this gesture 47,000 times in the past century. Each time, the threat passes. Each time, he remains. His superhuman mind calculates probabilities. Threat assessment protocols engage. Battle plans form and dissolve like smoke. But beneath the tactical analysis, something else stirs. Something that might once have been called doubt. What if the next threat is the one? What if today is the day the Golden Throne finally fails? The thought tastes like copper and shame. He remembers the weight of a child's laughter, the warmth of sunlight on unarmored skin, the simple pleasure of choosing what to eat for breakfast. These memories are poison now. Weakness, humanity. He purges them with practiced efficiency. The Emperor's psychic presence washes over him like radiation. It burns away sentiment. It reminds him of his purpose. Protect, serve, endure. Always endure. The threat passes. The Vox channels fall silent. Terra spins on through the void, carrying its cargo of the dead and dying. The Custodian returns to his vigil, his heart's beat in perfect synchronization. His breathing follows patterns established millennia ago. His thoughts move in predetermined channels. He is no longer a man. He is a function, a living weapon in a golden shell. This is what victory looks like in the 41st millennium. This is what happens when you save the galaxy by sacrificing your soul. The throne room echoes with the sound of his breathing. In, out, eternal, mechanical, hollow. Somewhere in the underhive, a child looks up at the sky and dreams of golden angels. She doesn't know that angels can bleed. She doesn't know that heaven is just another word for prison. She doesn't know that the price of her safety is measured in the sanity of 10,000 perfect warriors. The Custodian feels her prayer like a whisper in his enhanced hearing. It cuts through his conditioning for just a moment. For just a moment, he remembers what it felt like to hope. Then the moment passes. The conditioning reasserts itself. The golden mask slides back into place. But the question remains, echoing in the spaces between his thoughts. When the last human dies, when the galaxy falls to chaos, when the stars burn out and darkness claims everything, will the Custodes still be standing guard over an empty throne? In our world of endless surveillance and willing sacrifice of privacy for security, we might ask ourselves, what golden prisons are we building? And who will stand guard when we're gone?